Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the 道德经 by 老子。千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together.Let us begin. Now, I would like to extend a warm welcome. Thank you for joining us. Please center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now, to be fully present,and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process in the Tao with one another. And now, without further ado, let us continue with 道德经 32. As we discussed last time, this title,Knowing to stop is taken from the second half of this chapter, which we will definitely discuss today. It is by far the most important concept from this chapter, knowing when to stop, as a way to counter the ever-increasing complexity,of one's life, of the world, of existence itself. So it is not just attaining peace of mind through some sort of meditative practice. The important thing Lao Tzu is pointing out is that we have to look at the world,in a certain way through the lens of the Tao to understand how it becomes so complex, so stress-inducing, so that we know exactly what to do and how to think to get ourselves to a better place. So this is how the chapter looks. It is unique in that the lines of this chapter do not have many repeating characters that will give us a clue as to the poetic structure that Lao Tzu was writing. Instead, we had to look more carefully,at the meaning, the expression, the concepts embedded in these lines to know where the breaks are. So the analysis that we did looks like this. We began talking about the Tao. Then Lao Tzu goes on to talk about holding on to the Tao.What are the good things that will happen if we do so? And this is spoken of in the context of the ancient rulers, which we know automatically is the context that is relevant to us. And the metaphor used that we discussed last time is the sweet dew,representing all the good things in life that we can experience, whether we're talking about physically, mentally, or spiritually, just all aspects of life. So we all instinctively want to have more of the sweet dew.The solution for most human beings that they imagine will get them there is the pursuit of material things, which actually will lead them in a different direction. So this becomes a course-correcting lesson from Lao Tzu to us. So as we will discuss today, Lao Tzu goes on to talk about the complexity of life, represented as names assigned by humans to things that become ever more numerous. Hence, Lao Tzu has the reprimand, the recommendation to stop doing that before we get ourselves into even more of a mess. Then, at the end of this chapter, as you can see in this slide, Lao Tzu will come full circle back to the Tao, using yet another metaphor. The streams of the valley into rivers and the ocean. So we will get to that today as well. So the recap of what we talked about before, we went into the concept of the sweet dew in great detail. As I just mentioned, this is a metaphor to talk about goodness in life. The important thing here to remember for the recap is that the goodness of the sweet dew is the direct result of harmony. And Lao Tzu expresses the concept as when heaven and earth come together in a harmonious, peaceful, overall balance. That is when the rain of sweet dew will descend. And what does it mean when we talk about harmony and balance? It is when everything in life comes together, complementing each other. And the balance is that nothing is too much or too little, but just right. It is not overabundance or excess. It is just what you need, when you need it. So, the related recap is the graphic that we talked about previously as well. The important thing here for this recap is just to note that sweet dew literally covers every aspect of your life, but material aspects being no exception, because in the Tao, material success is just one of the ways that overall success in life can manifest. And that, of course, is related to, often connected to, professional success. And not just the professional, sweet dew impacts one's personal life as well. And when we get personal, Lao Tzu and the Tao are specific in noting that it's not just the spiritual aspects. I bring this up specifically because I want to make sure everybody gets the message that the Tao is more than just a spiritual philosophy. It is a way of life. As a way of life, it covers the full gamut. It is the mental aspects, your mind, the way you think, the way you perceive the world around you, the way you learn, the way you increase your knowledge, as well as your wisdom. And when we talk about wisdom, we go from the mental aspects to spirituality. And that's certainly part of the picture. There's an emphasis on spirituality because it is the driving core of your being. When you get the spiritual aspects right, it has a powerful effect on everything else. People would not usually associate the spiritual with the physical. And I would only point out that there's a definite connection. Perhaps one of the ways that we can see it that makes the connection clear is to imagine someone practicing Tai Chi. It is movement, it benefits the body physically, and yet, as one is practicing that, it is a meditative practice in motion. So the mind is resting, not thinking particular thoughts, just focusing on breathing and movement. And all of this contribute to spiritual growth. So there's no escaping the reality that all of us are a connected whole. No aspect is left out. Everything that we do affects every aspect. Then, last time, we transitioned to the discussion about knowing to stop. And as I noted, this is easily the most important concept of the chapter. Lao Tzu began talking about stopping by noting that we get increasingly more and more names, metaphorical for complexity, to have to remember, keep track of all the names, including the special terminology that people come up with. At some point, it all becomes too much. It doesn't help, which is ironic because human beings originally came up with names to make things easier. So we can refer to things in our discussion, so we can have concepts that are woven around those things that we have named. But then it is perhaps part of human nature to take a good thing and go completely overboard, over the top with it. So we've been doing it more and more. And that draws us away from the simplicity. So behind this chapter is a message from Lao Tzu that says, if we can recognize the reality of our situation, turn away from the ever-increasing complexity to simplify, to increase instead the simplicity of our lives by letting things go, by subtracting what we don't need, well, that is the certain path to the sweet dew that we're really looking for. So that is the recap from our discussion before. Let's continue on. We're now on line 12. Line 12 says, knowing when to stop, thus avoiding danger. So on the face of it, this is a rather emphatic statement that complexity leads to bad situations like confusion, disorientation. So this line is about knowing when to stop making things even more complicated And as I mentioned, we have a tendency to do that. Seems to be part of human nature. So one example is that when we think about our world today, there are many organizations out there for all kinds of different purposes. Could be a government organization, could be a civilian organization, like a business organization. And some organizations can be specifically for profit, like a company, a corporation. And some can, of course, be nonprofit, and that's for service, for providing for the common good. Now, regardless of whatever organizations we're talking about, the first observation from the sages would be that there's increasing complexity among them. The types of organizations, the categories of organizations, and within them, there is also complexity in the hierarchy. Each hierarchy is stuffed to fullness with titles and positions. And one of the consequences that we have all seen is that when there are too many titles and levels, people will, of course, compare and compete. And it is for recognition because originally these titles and ranks were meant to provide for some sort of order or clarity as to who is in charge of what, to bring the whole thing under some better control. But then we end up with so many layers, and titles are seen not as facilitation to understanding, but the vehicle of privilege. So people will, of course, start paying attention as to who has the rank, who will outrank whom, who has control. So the original goal might be efficiency, actual result, more like chaos. Chaos when people try to outdo one another for favors, visibility, or credit. And we have seen this pretty much in any organization when people battle among themselves to advance. So, recognizing that there are inherent risks associated with complexity. The first step in avoiding this risk is to stop the pursuit of complexity. That is, return to the state of pu, the principle of simplicity and plainness. And I want to be very clear here. Lao Tzu and the Tao sages are not advocating that we overturn the whole system. They recognize that oftentimes the external world will continue on no matter what, but they also recognize that we can always control ourselves and manage ourselves. So, stopping the pursuit of complexity, specifically here, is addressing our mental state. The world can be increasingly complex. That will not stop us from making our lives increasingly simple and plain. So, I stated like this. We cannot stop the world, nor should we interfere externally, but we are still in charge of ourselves. We can observe how people pursue transient status, oftentimes without being aware that it will not necessarily bring them what they truly want. So then the key for us is to live life with greater awareness. Being aware lets us know when we should continue, when it is appropriate to do so, and when there is danger or risk near, and therefore when it is time to stop. So we've taken the long way around to talk about why Lao Tzu emphasizes this point, knowing when to stop. There is a lot behind it. The idea is actually quite simple when we talk about it like this, but we're definitely noting that many people are not doing the simplifying that they should. Next line. Line 13. The existence of the Tao in the world. So this is setting up the very last line, line 14, that'll talk about streams in the valley, into rivers, and the ocean. But let's stay with this for the moment. When we talk about the Tao being present in the world, this is spoken of in multiple layers, in multiple contexts. For an ancient ruler, this meant having the Tao in the kingdom or empire. It is customary in ancient China to speak of the kingdom or the empire as the world. Although there was much, much more to the world beyond the borders of ancient China, the ancient Chinese had a geocentric perspective that placed themselves in the center of the world, much like the Europeans did when they imagined that the world was at the center of the universe. To the ancient Chinese, they would speak of the central land. And that was yet another indication that they saw themselves as being at the very center, meaning the most important. So, sometimes when people translate the term China to the Middle Kingdom, some may wax poetic and say that the ancient Chinese saw themselves as between heaven and earth. Well, they're not really getting how the ancient Chinese thought. It was really just hubris. It was really just people thinking of themselves as the most important or the most central. So what is translated as the Middle Kingdom, it's actually a bit of a distortion. In the thinking of the ancients, they thought of it more like the central kingdom, the most important one. Now, back to what Lao Tzu was trying to say. When the Tao is present in the kingdom, this all-important place, this empire, the consequence is that the people will follow the ruler, whether that is a king or emperor. They will do so naturally without being forced, because they would see the ruler following the Tao, and they would have the understanding that, look, this is in our best interest. we have the rare ruler who understands the Tao, we should follow the ruler. It is for the best for all of us. So when that is the case, the entire kingdom is united. There's solidarity. There's the united ability to accomplish great things and overcome great challenges. That is the factor that results in the sweet dew or prosperity raining down in abundance. It's coming down for all. So this is the ancient context, but it maps cleanly to modern life. For you, this means the presence of the Tao in your life. And we can see correspondence in exactly what Lao Tzu was describing for the ruler and the people. So remember, you are the emperor of your own existence. You have a choice to follow the Tao. And if you do, everyone around you will come into alignment with you. Just like the people of the ancient kingdom, the people in your life come into alignment without being forced. You don't tell them that they have to do that. They just do. And it's not just the people, it's the things, the events that occur to you. You enjoy what other people think of as good luck. Because everything works out. It is not only the people who understand you and support you, but also you get the quote-unquote lucky breaks. Only you will know that it is the natural consequence of your world being harmonious. That is the power of heaven and earth together in harmony. Sweet dew is the natural result. Last line. Is like streams in the valley into rivers and the ocean. So we take this together with the previous line. Basically, Lao Tzu is saying that when the Tao is present, it is like the flow of water. Just look at the streams coming down from the mountains into the valley, forming a river, which will find its way to the ocean. So this is applied to the ancient ruler as well. So think about smaller streams joining together to larger streams, which then flow into a river that can join another river to form a larger river. Use that as the visual for the metaphor that as the kingdom grows strong, it will receive tribute from vassal states. So the smaller streams correspond to smaller kingdoms, paying respects to the larger one. And we can map that to modern life as well. The tributes and allegiance from vassal states in ancient times will once again correspond cleanly to what we observe in our lives. The overall metaphor being that the ultimate will be the ocean receiving from many rivers. So, in the context of your existence, this says the more you are aligned with the Tao, the better life will be for you. situations tend to work out in your favor. And as we have seen in our previous discussion, unexpected help comes to you from all directions. We previously talked about Mencius, another sage, making the same observation. So, as we're talking about the ocean, we should also cover the other layers of meaning represented by the ocean. The ocean is vast. It accommodates everything. It receives from every conceivable river, no matter where they happen to flow from. This is metaphoric representative for the tolerance of the Tao and compassion. There is no narrow-minded pettiness when you cultivate the Tao. Tao cultivators can easily accommodate others, even though sometimes other people will have ideas that differ from their own. That's okay. Tao cultivators would not take offense, but would accommodate like the ocean receiving from any river. And yet another layer of meaning, the deepest core, is that the ocean serves as the symbol, the stand-in, the analogy for the Tao. So thousands of rivers flow into the ocean. What the sages would say is that look at the flow. It is representative of how ultimately everything, everyone must return to the Tao. So the expression in Eastern philosophy, 万法归一, literally meaning all dharmas return to the one. It is an expression from Zen Buddhism. But when you understand the meaning, you understand that it is nothing less than the Tao. So, looking at this line and thinking about the many layers of meaning embedded in the ocean, I think we would all agree that it would be best if we can have a story from the Tao tradition that will help us make this memorable. And indeed, there is one such story. It is called The Flow of Water. During the warring stage period, the young king of the Qi states, having recently ascended to the throne, felt a daily sense of worry. He thought, how can I make the people support me? How can I have the lords swear allegiance to me? One day, he heard of a sage in the mountain by the eastern sea, a man as wise about heaven and earth as he was about the nature of water and the human heart. So the king went to visit the sage personally. He found the sage. The sage was cordial, but did not say much. He led the king to a vantage point in the mountain. From that vantage point, they could see the valley below. Pointing to the valley, the sage said, "Your Majesty, look there." The king saw small streams trickling down the mountainside. Two small streams merged into a creek, which then joined a small river. Further ahead, several rivers rushed toward the same great river. The sage pointed further. "Look toward the distance, Your Majesty." The great river wound its way through twists and turns, and finally flowing into the vast, boundless ocean. Then the sage asked, "Your Majesty, have you ever seen a small creek say, 'I do not wish to flow toward the rivers in the sea. I want to flow back up the mountain'?" The king laughed. "How can water flow upward? It naturally flows downward." The sage nodded. "Why should the water flow at all? Why not simply remain on the mountain peaks and not flow anywhere? Why is it that all the water of the world willingly go to the sea?" The king thought for a moment and replied, "Because the mountains are high without much water, while the sea is low and has no limit of water. So it seems only natural that all the streams of the world would eventually converge in the ocean." The sage said, "Exactly. The sea does not compete for height with a single droplet of water. It simply receives in silence at the lowest point. The same is true for a ruler and the people." The king suddenly understood. "Do you mean that if a ruler is willing to humble himself and treat others with empathy, to receive them, the people will then naturally join him?" The sage nodded. "The Tao exists in the world, just as the sea exists among the 10,000 streams. It does not rely on force or commands, yet it is ever present. All things follow a path leading to it." If a ruler can be like the sea, acting with humility, not trying to compete with the people for profit, being willing to bear burdens, embracing the faults of the people with compassion, and acting along with momentum rather than against the human heart or natural laws, then the people of the world will flow towards him as naturally as water flows to the sea. If a ruler seeks only to dominate and stand above others, it is like being on the mountain peak and commanding the water to come by flowing uphill. Not only is it impossible, but it will cause the people to scatter as they search for another place to go. The king thought about the sage's words at length. When he returned to his palace, he began to reduce taxes. He began to practice leniency. Years later, in the surrounding lands. Many people fled warfare and strife. They come from neighboring lands to the kingdom of Qi, and they said, finally, this is the place where we can live in peace. This is where we belong. The end. The Tao. Let this story be a reminder for us that the Tao in the world is like the sea to the rivers, without contention, welcoming all things as they return to it. If we are willing to lower ourselves and embrace others like the great sea, people will naturally flow toward us rather than to be pushed away. In the story, when people from neighboring lands came to the Qi kingdom, they built a new life for themselves in safety, in peace. And in doing so, they contributed to the overall strength and prosperity of their new home, their new homeland. When the king saw this for himself, he felt the truth of the sage's words even more. So, in a small way, he had become more like the ocean in accepting, embracing, and integrating newcomers, like the inflow of rivers and streams. You and I can apply this Tao to our own lives by assuming a lower profile, that is, by becoming genuinely humble, by embracing all with real compassion. We too benefit and enrich ourselves in the process. Historically, that is exactly what has always made us stronger. We're not out to chase after anything or anyone. Good things and good people come to us on their own. It's a natural process, and it always works. Remember the water flowing downhill. And now, to close out our detailed discussion of this chapter, I want to bring all the ideas presented by Lao Tzu together into one holistic thought. So we are on the last line of this chapter, which says, the existence of the Tao in the world is like streams in the valley into rivers and the ocean. So what I would like to do is to combine, unite all the different ideas presented by Lao Tzu into one thought. We have talked about the plainness and simplicity of Pu. We have talked about the power of the small. We have talked about the natural flow, the sweet dew, knowing when to stop. And of course, this image of the streams into the river, into the ocean. They all seem like different concepts, but in the eyes of the sages, they're all interconnected. How can we see what they see? How can we note the relationships and connections? Let me show you how it can look. So we begin with this ancient map. It shows mountains to the left, and water from high up flow downhill in mountain streams, join together to form larger streams and become a river in the heart of the valley. And as you can see in this map, the river winds its way through the ancient land, following the contours of the terrain to eventually flow into the ocean to the right. So the first thing that we can note about this is the small and simple, the pu. And the pu principle can represent what we're seeing here because water is the essence of simplicity and plainness. It is just water. We emulate the flexibility and natural humility of water, so this is how our narrative begins. Water starts out as snow on the mountain peaks, and then it melts and flows. In this way, water has always represented the Tao. It is the softest thing of the world, but also the strongest. It is the lowest, but also the most powerful. It is basic. People often take it for granted until they realize its importance when they need it to stay alive. And that too is like the Tao. And think about us, human beings. Physically, you are more water than any other substance. Water literally makes up the majority of your physical being. And if we're not talking about your physical body, spiritually, the essence of the Tao in you has all the characteristics that we recognize with water. At the very core basis of yourself, your essence is simple and plain. So, to be like water, to flow like water, that is to say, we can flow smoothly past obstacles, and we can flow to the lowest place and be naturally humble, just like water already is. So even with just the mountain, even with just the snow falling and eventually forming streams high up, there is already a lot to say. Next, Lao Tzu presents this idea. Although Pu is seemingly small and insignificant, often unnoticed, it is by no means subservient to anything. As we have heard in the story, we had a story that talked about prolonged drought. In that story, people noted that the water did not come, the rain did not occur, despite prayers, despite pleading. It is exactly the same of what happens when there's too much water. The drought is too little water. A flood is so much water that it is a disaster. In a flood, the water doesn't stop on anyone's command. So, the simplicity and plainness of water is something that is only the appearance. The reality is the nature that is supreme, that is subservient to none. Let's map that to you. You're the sovereign of your own life. You're the master of your own destiny. Your mind is your own. Your life is whatever the path is that you choose. Destiny is what you create. It is what you design. It is what you author. So again, we see that something simple actually contains a world of ideas and depth. Then we continue on to harmony. Lao Tzu spoke of heaven and earth together in harmony. So the harmonious nature of all this can be seen in the smooth flow of water. The streams flow downhill without being forced. They join each other and flow together in perfect harmony. In the Tao, we often talk about the water course, the place where different streams will come together at a convergence point, and from that point, continue as one. That is a metaphor for people coming together, joining forces, and then proceeding as one. So, when heaven and earth harmonize with each other, sweet dew will begin to rain. This denotes the central importance of harmony in the Tao. So, we have talked about how the streams and the rivers, they flow all by themselves. There is no external control. And when either the streams or the rivers encounter each other, there's no contention. They merge. So in view of these harmony lessons, we too can follow the natural flow of life. We can be harmonious with it and not fight against it. And when we encounter others along the way, we can join together, much like you and I have come together in the Tao, in this meeting, this talk. We can continue the journey forward together as travel companions, all in the spirit of harmony. So that is embedded in this image as well. Then, let's focus on the sweet dew. Sweet dew means goodness. Goodness that occurs in every aspect of life. We can apply that to the river in the sense that the river brings benefits, just like the rain of sweet dew. It is just like when we flow together with one another, when we flow with virtue, everybody benefits. It's a win-win. So, another thing to note is the interplay with harmony. We can see that the river winding its way across the landscape, it is adjusting its course according to the terrain. It does not dictate how it should go. It is flexible in its approach. But then, no matter where it goes, it slakes the thirst of the myriad things. After that, it moves on without needing rewards or applause. So think about that as a model for us, internally and externally. So keep in mind the overall concept of harmony leading to good things. Harmony leading to sweet dew. So internally, when we possess virtues, when we establish harmonious mind and spirit, good things naturally happen in life. The sweet dew is raining down on us, or the river is bringing water to us. Externally, it applies just as easily. We bring the goodness, assistance, and peace to every place we visit. We become like the river in being the ambassador of goodwill, the envoy bringing presents for all. This is in everything we do, with everyone we connect with. That is the ideal. So, let's go toward the right, to the ocean. First, Lao Tzu would note that if the ruler can hold on to the Tao, then things fall into place. Wise rulers understand how important this is. So the way for the rulers is to govern through alignment, not control. Control is always going to be verging on the unwise, especially excessive control. To be controlling is to manipulate, to interfere. The paradigm of the Tao is not to control others. There's guiding, there's nurturing, there's assisting. All will bring you into perfect alignment with others as well as the Tao itself. And we can see the importance of this in this image because this speaks to being low, like the ocean. And when we emulate that, when we embody this virtue, we too receive all that life has to offer. We can also note, as we have mentioned in a previous slide, that the ocean has the capacity to accept all rivers, regardless of origin. And that means to be the truly wise ruler of our own lives, we must also have the capacity to accept all people, regardless of where they come from. In the Bible, this is represented prominently in the teachings from Jesus, that we should accept the stranger, people from other lands, and treat them with kindness, no different from our own. If instead of kindness, instead of compassion, one were to use force or to attempt domination, then we know in the Tao that would only circle back to us to put us on the receiving end. The circular nature of the Tao will see to this. It will guarantee that this happens. What goes around comes around. So, bottom line, when one rules through alignment and guidance, you basically wield the force of nature. It is greater than any human contrivance. And lastly, let's wrap this up with this thought from Lao Tzu. If one is able to hold on to the Tao, all shall follow. That is consistent with this image. All the water of the world flow toward the sea. And upon reaching the sea, the water becomes one with the ocean. This is natural. It is not just the river that is adjusting its own path toward the ocean. The same truth applies to all the water of the world, no matter where you happen to be. And we talked about how if a ruler were to hold on to the Tao, to rule with compassion, not coercion, people adjust themselves, like the streams and rivers adjusting themselves to come together in a completely natural way, unforced, no contrivance. Same for us. We follow the Tao. We embody the virtues of the sea. So, naturally, without force, without command, without order, good things in life flow toward us. We can receive abundantly from all directions. I know that previously some have asked me about the mechanism behind the law of attraction. Right here in this slide in front of everybody, the mechanism is spelled out in exact detail. This is how reality works. This is how existence functions. And lastly, let me talk about the last bullet point. Upon reaching the sea, the water becomes one with it. That is, the water of the river becomes the water of the ocean. It has no further need to go anywhere else. I would like everyone to think about how this can be true for us. You and I have reached the Tao. We are home. This is where we are meant to be. We can stop. There's no further need to flow anywhere else. This is our spiritual haven. It is here that we can find rest that restores and refreshes. So now we can see when Lao Tzu talks about this. He wrote, "The existence of the Tao in the world is like streams in the valley into rivers and the ocean." When he wrote this, he was actually talking about the Tao and us. He wasn't talking about water at all. Or perhaps we can say he was. He was talking about the water or the flow of humanity. The myriad things, absolutely everything in the universe will return to the Tao. We're part of the totality. One day, when we are done with our tasks, our mission in this world, we too will flow into the Tao. We too will return to oneness, to the cosmic ocean that is the Tao itself. We have now completed our line-by-line discussion of Tao Te Ching 32. It is now time for us to talk about the paraphrase. So our purpose is to demonstrate understanding by expressing the original meaning using modern language. We have divided this chapter roughly into two parts. Part 1, Part 2. Part 1 begins talking about the Tao itself. It goes into Pu. It talks about holding on to the Tao and how everything will simply follow. Then it talks about the sweet dew, which in the same way will fall without being forced. So here is the paraphrase I want to offer to encapsulate all of that. The Tao is the eternal constant. It has always existed, long before there were any humans to give it a name. Its characteristic of plainness and simplicity may not seem like much, but it rules over the world, and it is second to none in making the greatest difference in life. When rulers hold on to this Tao, the people will follow the leadership of wisdom on their own. There is no need to force anything. The various aspects of the kingdom adjust themselves, and there is peace and prosperity for all. Similarly, when you hold on to the Tao, your world comes into harmony, and everything falls into place, like a rain of sweet dew from heaven. You do not need to force anything. Good things happen on their own, bringing peace and prosperity into your life. So that is the first half. I think that despite the modern language, this manages to convey everything that Lao Tzu wanted to convey. And this is perfectly understandable to anyone without needing to dig into the ancient text to understand classical Chinese and the differences between that and modern Mandarin. Let's now take a look at the bottom half. This is the part that we just covered. It's talking about the names representing complexity. And because of the increasing complexity, there is a need for us to know when we should stop. We should stop to avoid making our lives even more of a mess. Then we end with the Tao in the world, using the metaphor of the streams and the rivers and the ocean. So here is the paraphrase I would like to offer. In the beginning of humanity, names were given to everything as we attempt attempted to understand the world. In time, this proliferated into greater complexity, leading to confusion. The sages observed this and realized that just as complexity gave rise to confusion, attachments gave rise to negativity. They concluded that in all things, it would be more in accordance to the Tao to know when to stop. Indeed, this is one of the methods of Tao cultivation that we need to practice in life. The more we can do that, the more we become like the ocean, receiving abundantly from all the rivers of the world. So that is the paraphrase for the second half. I think that before I myself encountered the Tao, I thought about receiving the goodness in life, experiencing all that life had to offer. But without the Tao, I did not know how I would go about doing that. Lao Tzu gave me the instructions. This right here is the map that leads me to enjoying the abundance of the sweet dew. So this is the paraphrase. We are now ready for the full circle for Tao Te Ching 32. The full circle is a demonstration that every chapter in the Tao Te Ching is a circle where the end maps right back to the beginning. So in the last line of Tao Te Ching 32, Lao Tzu uses the metaphor of rivers flowing into the ocean in alluding to how the Tao functions in the world. We can link this to the beginning, and we see Lao Tzu describing the Tao as constant, eternal, and nameless. So let's connect these ideas together. Rivers, ocean, the Tao, constant, eternal, nameless. So the observation is that this is the way it has always been, and the way it will always be. Those streams and rivers have been flowing into the ocean before you and I were ever born. When we're gone, they will continue the same flow. So this is true for everything, including human beings. Therefore, by being low-key, humble, and content, assuming the low profile, we receive all the goodness that life has to offer. And we do so in tranquility, just like the depths of the ocean. So because of that, I want to end this chapter by reciting again the final lines. The existence of the Tao in the world is like streams in the valley into rivers and the ocean. Although this is now just a repetition, I think it hits differently. I think every time we look at this, in view of all the ideas expressed, it takes on new levels of meaning and significance. And now, it is time to summarize. we usually do summary slides for a chapter. The part 1 summary is what we looked at last time. It was about the Tao of alignment. And as always, when Lao Tzu talks about the ancient rulers, when Lao Tzu advises them to hold on to the Tao in governance, it's really about us. Lao Tzu said that this would bring peace and prosperity. Well, that's us as well. So, I know that I can use more peace and prosperity in my life, and I hope you can as well. So, I want to address the sweet dew and link that to the journey that we are currently on. Because good things happen naturally when you walk the path. As you and I walk this path, the rain of sweet dew is naturally falling on us. If you were to put this into practice, if you were to put what we talk about into everyday life applications, then it is a guarantee that everything and everyone will come into alignment with you. That's really the message of this chapter. And it's a powerful message. Now, let's also make sure we cover the second half of the summary. The wisdom to know when to stop. So, we began the second half with the concept of names. From names to complexity and limits. Naming is defining and categorizing instead of understanding. You're just pointing at something and giving it a label. Once things are named, distinctions arise. There's no denying that naming is useful. It allows us to function in the world, but it also introduces limits. It also brings complications. So we should stop being attached to the words to instead focus on the meaning. The finger pointing at the moon is only an indicator. The moon is where the heavenly glory is at. So true wisdom is not endless expansion of complexity, words, and names. True wisdom is knowing when we have enough. Second point, the Tao of restraint. Going too far in any aspect of life leads to unwanted outcomes, what Lao Tzu calls dangers, what we can call risks. So instead, we should do just enough to be at just the right place. Knowing when to stop is not a mindset of fear or hesitation. It is all about awareness and precision. When we overreach, whether in ambition, effort, control, or desire, we create instability. But when we do just enough, moving only as far as needed, you remain composed, balanced, and therefore effective. And the final point, the natural flow of goodness. When walking the path, we do not chase the good things in life. Why even bother? It's coming to us. Like attracts like. So the Tao brings the good to us. At the end of this chapter, We saw the image, the Tao being like the streams flowing into rivers and the ocean. We note the ocean does nothing to demand, yet all the water go to it. That's a hint to us that we need to be aligned and grounded, restrained. That is when goodness begin making their way to us. Opportunities, support, recognition, peace of mind, as inevitable as the rivers themselves. This shows up everywhere. Think about the times when you stop pushing in a personal interaction and understanding surfaces. Think about how when you pause instead of forcing something and gain clarity. So know that what is rightfully yours will never leave you, whether we're talking about position, relationships, belongings, anything. On the other hand, if you pursue what was never yours to begin with, no matter what that is, it will only leave you empty, lost, and deflated. So let us all be like the ocean. Let us all receive by not striving, but just by being in the right place at the right depth, without going anywhere too far. And that is the final statement on 道德经 32. For easy access to Tao resources, visit my website, dereklin.com. There, you can click on links and see everything listed, such as Taoism.net, information about the Tao and this meeting, our Facebook community, a place to discuss the Tao with fellow seekers, our YouTube channel, recordings of all our previous meetings, my Amazon author page, books and audiobooks for further exploration. You can go directly to this page at dereklin.com/links. When you see the benefits of the Tao in your life, share your experience through comments in Facebook and share these resources with friends who may also benefit. If you find my books or audiobooks helpful, please post your reviews on Amazon to guide others to the Tao. If you have connections to prisoners interested in the Tao, contact me through Derek Lin Books on Facebook, and I will send my books to them free of charge. This is the path that I am on, so I can say sharing the Tao has transformed my life in incredible ways. I would like to invite you to come along. Let us travel together on the path in the journey of life. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness. Thank you, everyone. We are done for today. Have a great week, and I will see you in the next meeting. Bye for now.